21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
I was born into a world that was always telling me who I could and couldn't be. I can't be too happy. Boys don't cry. I can't be gay. But nobody ever asked me, who is Rugare Gomo? My name is Rugare Gomo, and I am a high-performance business and leadership coach. As I said, the moment I was born, the world was telling me who I should and shouldn't be. I grew up in Zimbabwe, and when I was 16 years old, I moved to Australia by myself with one bag, one suitcase at $300. This was my journey to freedom. Did I know it then? Hell no, I had no idea. What I knew was that something wasn't quite right when I was growing up. You see, I was born in the UK, but I wasn't British when I was born, because of course my parents are being Zimbabwean. So the messages I received were, I don't belong. And when I grew up in Zimbabwe, English is my first language, when most people speak Shona or Ndebele. So of course, working through society, I was always told I was trying to be better than. I was trying to be a show-off. But I was just being myself. For me, as well as I was going through the educational system, I grew up having to learn by rote, meaning whatever the teacher said, whatever the adult said, I had to do. That made no sense, particularly when I was growing up in a home where my mom and my dad fostered a culture of thinking independently. And so in Zimbabwe, typically in those days, to have a very successful life, you had to follow the well-trodden path. Do well at primary school. You're already been graded from grade 1. When you're 6 years old, you're already in a competition. Then let alone when you go into high school. And all along the way, immediately from when you're 6 years old, you have exams. It's exam after exam after exam to determine if you're good enough, to determine if you're worthy enough. And your family, your cousins, society celebrates you when you get that A in life. I wasn't that child. I just wanted to read my books, my Nancy Drew books, my Hardy Note books, my Famous Five. And as a teenager, like Patricia Cornwell books, Sidney Sheldon. I wanted to do things that other people were not doing, different kinds of subjects as a mixture. But no, in Zimbabwe, you had to follow the well-trodden path. So as a child, as I'm growing up and getting older and older, I can feel my light snuffing away. I knew things had to change. I instinctively knew. So as 14-year-old boy with little resources, with a family that loves me but does not have monetary resources, I asked a family friend who was living in Australia if I could come over to study. So I didn't tell my parents this that I was going to do this. I did this all in secret because I was scared, again, that society would be in my way. Family norms would be in my way, where a child should be seen and not heard. But this was my first step of reclaiming my life, because I refused to live and follow the well-trodden path. It was time for me to discover who is Rugare Gomo, because nobody was asking me. So I had to ask me, who is Rugare Gomo? Fortunately, this family friend, whom I call Uncle Andrew, he said yes. Just an everyday, ordinary Australian running a small business in Melbourne. He himself was an entrepreneur. Not many resources, as you know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And he said, yes, I'll help. So what did he do? He used his privilege, he used his voice, and he used his skills to discover bringing me to Australia. He talked to many schools in Melbourne, and one school said yes, and I was given a past scholarship. He paid for my air tickets, and I stayed at his home. The exceptional thing was that he himself was already looking after many boys in his home. So I came into a home with all these boys from different walks of life who were trying to find their own path as well. And this changed my life forever. Now, coming to Australia, I didn't know it was my journey to freedom. I just thought it was my journey for an education that I would not have had in Zimbabwe. That's how I would have talked about it. And of course, education opens doors. But what I have learned is, what kind of education am I actually receiving that's going to open doors that are aligned with who is Rugare Gomo? And today I ask you, what kind of education is going to open doors for who is you? So my first 2 years in Australia was amazing, of course. Cultural shock. I'd never used a dishwasher, a washing machine, a dedicated internet. So that was all very new for me. Or even going to school where kids had their own voice and talked back to their parents. That was very new to me. Or going into classes and the teacher actually wanted to know what I thought, not what was said in the textbook. That was very new for me. So that was also very difficult, because then I had to figure out, who am I? What actually are my thoughts? Because nobody had ever asked, who is Rugare Gomo? What does Rugare Gomo think? Now for university, it was a very difficult time. So I'm an international student in Australia, and the fees are very expensive in Australia. And during that time is the Zimbabwean crisis. So if I don't make it in Australia, I have to go back to Zimbabwe to nothing. And when I say to nothing, the country has fallen apart. The universities have closed down. Mom has to go to South Africa every month to get food because there's no food on the shelves. There's no fuel in the country. There is no point asking for how much is bread, because by the time you get to the front of the queue, the price of bread has gone up because we're dealing with the hyperinflation. So I knew that I had to figure out a way to create a new opportunity for myself. So as an 18-year-old boy, I raised over $120,000 over the next 6 years to go to university. The person you are seeing today and hearing today wasn't the person who arrived in Australia. I was quiet and shy. I would never look into your eyes because I grew up in a world where I was taught that white is better than black. I grew up in a world where I'm taught that as a black man, I'm going to have to work 10 times harder to make it. I had low self esteem because of all these ideas of who and what a black man is. But having a game or a future I'm trying to create that is bigger than my identity changed my life, and it's changed my life forever. So it's inside of having that game of going to university where I started learning to have conversations. So I call going to university my first capital raise. Going to university had me start connecting with people from all different walks of life. I had to use my voice. Going to university taught me what it is to run at a deadline. Because if I did not raise that money on time, I would be deported back to Zimbabwe to nothing. That was not an option for me. So having a big game in life, and this is for any entrepreneur, for any person, in fact, is what changed me. I didn't wait to be confident to be able to raise the money. It is raising that money that led to my journey of freedom, of empowerment. So a lot of the time, I will hear people saying, I can't do public speaking because I'm not confident. Or I won't write that book because I'm not a writer. For me, what I have learned in life is once I'm committed to the game, to the opportunity, and close the back door, that is what changes. So fast forward, I completed university with a double degree in arts honors in French and European studies and law. Now, at that time in 2008, when I finished my law degree, there were no opportunities for a person like me. And what I mean a person like me, a migrant. When I applied to get into law firms, the first question they'd always ask is, are you an Australian permanent resident or an Australian citizen? Of which I was neither. I'm an international student. And that's when I realized why many international students do not do law. But I wasn't going to be held back when I discovered that. I was going to continue on my path. I was going to continue living Rugare Gomo's dreams, not the limitations of what the world was going to be telling me were my opportunities. So again, I had to discover creating and opening doors. In my first year of university, I had the opportunity of working in a law firm, and I started in the mailroom. I knew that I wasn't going to have many opportunities, so I worked my way up. I worked in the mailroom, then I worked in research, I worked in document management, then I became a paralegal. So then I went directly to the human resources and I said to them, I can't apply for any jobs because I'm not an Australian permanent resident. And HR at that time said to me, well, that's strange. And I laughed in my head, well, because it's their own processes. That's how disconnected people and organizations can be from their own systems and processes, particularly when you're doing your check the box, which leads to many organizations losing out on talent, extraordinary people, because they put their own barriers in their way. So I had to learn to use my voice once again. And they asked me for a paper application. And that's how I then got a job in a law firm. There was also one obstacle that was completely out of my control. At that time, there was actually no visa that I could take and use for me to actually work in the law firm because there were no international students going into law firms. So there was this one visa called an occupational trainee visa, which is typically used by foreigners like nurses or already people who have a profession who want to retrain in Australia. So there's going to be something we were going to consider doing, but it's going to be like gambling. 50-50. Are we going to get it or not? Because this was an unusual situation. I say the universe conspired because 6 months before I got my job placement, they changed the immigration laws and introduced the 485 visa, a trainee visa for any graduate in Australia to work, study for 18 months and do whatever they want in Australia as a pathway for Australia to continue retaining amazing people in the workforce. So that's how I got to stay in Australia. So what I've learned about forging my own path is to not wait for all the elements to align. I just got to start taking action now. And in the process, I'm either going to invent opportunities for myself, create opportunities, and there's also a bit of luck. So this principle of a game bigger than my identity, bigger than myself, taking action irrespective of if I know I can fulfill on it, has served me well. And it has opened so many doors for me to become the person I am today. Today, who I say I am. I'm a lawyer. I'm a model. I'm a philanthropist. I'm an author of a book called Dreams Forging My Own Path. That's who I say I am. And nobody can take that away from me. But what is more important, what is more important is I know who I be. Who I say I be is I exist to inspire and empower all people to dream, forge their own path, and be the leader of their life. And nobody can take that away from me. I am a high performance coach, and I believe that everybody is a pioneer. But society, family, education rob us of our light, of who we are. I help people return and reclaim who they say they are. How do you know if this is you? These are the questions I ask people I work and serve. Do you have peace of mind? Do you have freedom? Do you feel empowered? And are you unleashed in life? So anytime you feel you don't feel free, anytime you don't feel you have peace of mind, consider you may be living out somebody else's idea of who you are. And this will flow through your career, your business, your relationships. So the first thing is to actually first accept that you may not have the answer. I didn't have all the answers, but I had to first accept I have low self-esteem. I first had to accept that I had limiting beliefs. Acceptance is the first stage to freedom. Acceptance is the first stage to being a pioneer of your life. So how do I help people? Of course, we figure out what your goals are. Very, very important. And your goal is something bigger than your identity. We talk about your dreams. We get you reconnected to your dreams. Then the second stage is we talk about all the things and all your good reasons that are in the way for not pursuing your dreams. I'm married. I'm in a relationship. I've got a mortgage. I've got children. I've got responsibilities. We talk about all of them. The good reasons, I call them. You're going to have good reasons, excuses, justifications, and sometimes just plain old good denial of the situation. So that's the second step. And then the third thing we look at is the cost to you. So for me, anytime I don't live my true self, it's costing me. It's costing me my happiness. It's costing me my income. It's costing me my joy. It's costing me something. But on the other side, there's a payoff. So it's two things. It's not just one thing. Sometimes in life, we want to just have that very clear, this is the answer. It's not. There's a cost and there's a payoff. And when I look at my life, or when I've not opened doors, it's because I don't want to be uncomfortable. I just want to feel safe. I just want to be comfortable. Oh, I'm just so scared of the unknown. So there's always a payoff. But that payoff doesn't allow us to live life on our terms, doesn't allow us to forge our own path. Then we work on your commitment, because there's nothing wrong for you stay living the life you're living in. Because this is not about shaming or blaming or saying you're not good enough. There's nothing wrong. So this is where I call the crossroad. Are you committed to something greater than your identity in that moment? So we want to figure that out. For me, what I was committed to is freedom. That's what I was committed to. So the next step is really getting connected to your commitment. And there's no shortcut to this. You can't say, I want freedom, when in your heart, you don't care about it. So it's not just a logical concept. It's actually discovering what you're committed to in your heart. Very important. Then we map out the actions that are consistent to that committed. What are the actions that are consistent to freedom for you? Not Rugare Gomo's version, but your version. That's really important. And then we start taking action. Start taking action and more action. It's inside of the action that you become a person you never imagined yourself to be. I have become a person I've never imagined myself to be. You can find my book, Dreams Forging My Own Path, on my website. I've written this book with all the challenges I've had in my life and how I've worked through them. And I have no doubt this book will also open up opportunities for you to dream and forge your own path in your life. If you want to find out more about my services and how we can partner together for you to dream and forge your own path, you can find me at www.rugaregomo.com. I'm always on LinkedIn. Come and find me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with you there too.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.